You're watching World Championship Wreckage, brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In today's episode, the heels of WCW. Did you know there are some very scary heels no one ever mentions? And who could be scarier than Oz? He just made Sting scream! And don't forget Brother Brudeye. He almost found the solution to end Hulkamania.
Look at that man! They get bigger and uglier as they come!
And that was correct for a time there, Bobby. But the scariest heel in WCW came in its dying days.
Yes, sir.
Is that who I think it is? That can't be him! Oh my God!
I stand before you as a real man
who was bathed in barbecue sauce last Sunday night.
The scariest heel in WCW history, Oklahoma.
That's my boy!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of World Championship Wreckage. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan, joined as always by my buddy from Box Spots and Chair Shots over at Rivet City Radio, the Will Gray. And you're getting a little bit of a bonus episode, folks, because we dropped that Hall and Nash invasion episode. And when it was up against what we were talking about today, WCW heels. And the reason we're dropping both is for the first time, the poll tied. So Will still can't get a point up on me. So hold on, let me just pull out the handy dandy. Got it right here. Let's see. So that means I've got 7, you've got 4. So the poll for the next one is actually still up. We'll talk about that at the end. But how's it going, buddy?
Don't call it a comeback. I'm gonna start this. It's gonna be that steady climb. But I got a new beard oil. My beard looks fucking voluptuous tonight. Like it looks nice.
Glorious.
It's brushed. It's oiled. Like it's conditioned. I like it. A little bit of salt and pepper mixed in. Like my beard's on point. I might be losing it, but like I'm losing the poles, but my beard is here.
Yeah. Now see mine. That is one thing I will blame my mother for, is I have her curly hair and it translated into the beard. So like for me, growth, it gets so curly, and I'm like, that's why I just keep it a nice
nice even amount,
nice tight. Like I get to a point and I'm like, nope, gotta trim it up.
We can't both look homeless, man. Like one of us has to look like they're put together.
Oh, I need to show you a picture from a show I did. This is totally a tangent, folks, and matters nothing to wrestling, but this is a bonus episode. So, hey, what are you getting? But I'm an actor, for those of you who don't know. I have a degree in theater. And I did a summer show, and it was an outdoor drama. So everything was outside. So if it rained, we got rained on in costume, and it was disgusting, and it was hot and sweaty, and it was a period piece, like set in like colonial time, so old school costumes, everything like that. The only way the show was ever canceled was if there was thunder and lightning, mainly lightning. Thunder didn't really do much. Thunder added to it because there was an actual cannon that went off at the end of the show, so the thunder helped and added to it. But like part of our contract was for all the guys, if you were cast as it was different if you were a red coat, because red coat, you didn't have a beard. Everybody else had to have a beard. But in the contract was if you trimmed your beard or shaved your beard without permission, they would fine you. And so by the end of the summer, it was so like stringy and wiry and disgusting, and like
that's amazing.
It was literally the night we ended, we had to strike everything and put it into stores and everything, which we ended the show around 10:30. Took probably about 3 to 4 hours. So, I mean, it's super late. I literally went home, I showered, and and like
shaved it off then.
Yeah, this was so long ago. Like the girl I was dating at the time had never seen me without a beard. she saw me without a beard the next day because I was just like, I don't even care. We're starting from scratch now again. Like, but I digress. That's just weird tangent since you started talking about your beard. But we are talking about WCW heels, and it's just Will and I today. But we are going to go through. We've each made a list, kind of like how we did on the managers episode a few weeks back. We have got our top 10 heels in WCW, and we're going to be going through those and talking about them. But Will, this was your poll topic, so you get to lead the charge.
So one of my favorite questions, DadHat, is in my interview series, I'll ask, especially if I know the wrestler I'm interviewing is a heel. I ask them, do you think it's easier to get them to hate you than it is to get them to love you? And I've heard that homage from workers and trainers and people throughout the business. Like, do you think as a wrestling fan and a wrestling podcaster, do you think it's easier for a wrestler to get you to hate them than it is for them to get you to love them? For you personally, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so easy. It's easy. Everybody has that like I don't like, especially if they're doing something like, oh, that like I'm better than you. Like, now who are you? Like, F you, like that. But like, it takes a lot for me to like invest in someone and be like, I like you. I'm going to put my money into you. I'm going to put my time and energy into you. I'm going to back you as a baby face. And heel, it's just natural emotion just to be like, F you. But I mean, I can speak on that as an actor. It's so much more fun playing the bad guy, playing the antagonist and everything. It's the same thing in like a comedy for me. Like, I love being the funny fat friend. I hate having to be the straight man. Same thing here. Heel versus babyface.
So looking at the classic heel work, I've recently had a conversation with a guy I'm working on a project with. He's a film guy. That's what he did. He went to school for it. He's a huge wrestling fan, but he just recently got in my brain with something, and I want to pick your brain with it. And it all ties into being a heel and the way you portray that character on screen. He said at the core of what wrestlers are, they are at the purest, most raw method actors. They adapt a personality and a character at the core of what they are. They turn it up to 11, and they eat, sleep, and breathe that existence. So when you think of these classic heels, do you think they're just like the epitome of method actors?
It's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, because you hear in wrestling all the time, like the most successful, whether they're heels or baby faces, it's they're themselves cranked up to 11. That's become like
Bingo, yeah,
a tagline everywhere. And so, I mean, method acting is adding reality to what you're trying to portray. I even have a tangent on that. I did a show one time, and it's probably my favorite play ever. It's called The Exonerated, and it's true stories. It's pieced together by the playwright, pieced together talking to real people who were incarcerated and exonerated from death row because it's their story because DNA evidence and stuff like that, and it's super in different times and everything early, or I mean, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and everything, and how DNA evidence exonerated them. But it's a super, super awesome play, and I got to be a part of it. And like when we did it in college, like myself, thinking that method acting was the coolest thing ever, because I mean, it helps you.
Everybody wants to be Hunter Thompson, right?
Yeah. Like me and a couple other people, like we really we were trying to figure out a way that we could like not get arrested and be in jail, but we wanted to like go to the county sheriff or go to the county the cops and just be like, is there a way you can put us in just for the weekend? Like, let us see what it's like to feel like behind those bars, to be on it's nothing like doing hard time, but we wanted that idea to put some reality base to it. And here for heels and everything, I mean, it's for the successful ones. You look at them, it's them. It's yes, it's another company. Let's look at The Rock for a second. The Rock, look at him now in Hollywood and everything. Super charming, super popular and everything, right? But really, and I love The Rock. I'm a huge Rock fan. I mean, I have his shoes. I drink his energy drinks. Like, I see all his movies. he's got that smart ass, arrogant, like part of his personality. And you look at him as a heel, it's all that cranked up. So I mean, that's the best way to put it. Like, whoever told you that is brilliant.
I thought so, and I was like, damn it, Zach. Like, he got in there, he got inside my head, and when he started saying it, I was like, it goes back to that old YouTube video. We can't talk about the guy who made it because he got big canceled, but it's the whole the whole thing that wrestling is everything but wrestling at this point in 2023. It's drama, it's intrigue, it's everything that builds up to it, and that includes good guys and bad guys. So looking at WCW heels in general, that's a lot. When you think the ton of people that could be encompassing into what that means. So like kind of looking at our top 10 list, mine personally, it might not be because of what their total work looked like in WCW. It's kind of what their heel turns or those heel moments meant for wrestling. So I'm going to let you start off. Who'd you put number 10 on your top 10 heels?
You might be surprised because it's kind of low, but it's looking at overall. Like, I made a big list, and then I just started kind of narrowing it down. And I'm like, okay, here's my 10. Now I have to order them. Now I have to rank them. And everybody else just kind of got a little bit more than this one, even though probably what most people would consider the greatest heel turn in wrestling. Number 10, Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Ooh, okay.
Because everybody, like the NWO was the cool heels, the start of that. Like, it was cool to like them because they were the bad guys and everything. But like, and here's, I mentioned off air to you, I have 2 on here that have little caveats. I'm roping in with Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Eazy-E, Eric Bischoff, because like they were almost a tag team. Like the NWO was cool, but really people were booing Hogan. Like it was like, here's the NWO to me. I've always thought this is here's the cool kids, but they have their dad tagging along. It was Hogan, like trying to be like, hey, I can be cool with the kids and everything, which he did it great and everything, but like they were still kind of over, the brother and all that, which he was still doing. He was just doing it as a quote unquote heel. But Eric Bischoff helped accentuate the heel side with promos and everything. So it's kind of a tag team for me for number 10, but Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
I have a tag team for mine, and Hogan is also on my list, but Hogan's a little bit higher than number 10. Okay. So I'm going to save a lot of my Hogan spill for why I put Hogan where I did when I get to it.
Okay.
The number 10 on my list is the Great Muta.
Yeah, I don't have Muta on mine.
This was one of those like left field, very Will Gray picks, but the reason why Muta was on my board was because when he came over from Japan, he had Sonny as his manager, Sonny Ono. Like, he needed that mouthpiece. He was very mystic and dark, and there was a lot of things that he did that made him a great heel. His first feud in WCW was against Sting. That red, white, and blue surfer, biggest baby face in the business, Sting. So I was like, Muta's got that. Then you look at his later work and his later heel runs, the Dark Carnival with Vampiro.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was so much this guy did. So I slid Muta in there at 10, not because of the quantity of work, but the quality of work he did as a heel in WCW.
Yeah, Muta. Muta is literally an episode we could just do all on its own. Like, I
just
love
like Muta. Vader.
Yeah,
hands down.
I love me some Muta and everything. And Muta, as much as I love him and everything, I know there's so much that I've never seen. I could literally if that ever want to poll, I'm like, okay, we're gonna need to take that 3 weeks for me to watch even more of stuff that I've missed from him. But yeah, that's a good choice, and one that I actually did not even think of.
I was happy with that one. I was like, Mood is a good pick. And there's so many times on my list, I'm going to say it's not about they weren't heels the whole time, but when they were heels, it mattered. Yeah. Like, it did something. Mm-hmm. So, number 9, who you got?
So number 9 and number 8 for me, you mentioned with Muda, how Sting was the big feud, Surfer Sting, babyface, the star of the company, like the young up and coming, like the start of rock and roll in WCW is the best way I can put as Sting. So number 9 and number 8 really pushed him to be that hero in WCW. My number 9, not as prominent as a run in WCW as he had in WWF, but Jake the Snake Roberts.
Ooh, didn't make my list, but that's a great pick.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great pick.
The coal miner's glove on a pole match is one of those, like, it sticks in my mind from Halloween Havoc. I always forget the year, but it added something to Sting. Jake always had that, like, his heel was the psychological, like kind of how Roman does now. Like, I don't have to yell and scream.
He could just talk, and just the way he said things on the mic,
and word choice and everything. Like he's that. People, the memes that people you see all the time, and it's just like, I can watch a horror movie and not be scared and go right to bed, and people are getting slashed and diced and all that stuff. Watch reality documentaries and everything, and I'm up all night. That was Jake. Jake was real. Jake was scary because, like, he could be real. That could be your neighbor. That could be your someone lived down the street, someone and that's why I always like Jake as a heel.
I think he's one of those guys that he transcended the business no matter where he worked. He never held a world title, but he was always important with every promotion no matter where he was.
Yeah.
Somehow was able to do that, even in 2022 with AEW, up until the time they took him off TV. He was a manager. So he's longevity of his career is unreal. Number 9 for me, I put Sid Vicious.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, to be honest with you, I have never been a Sid guy. I've never, I don't know. I don't know if it's the look with the curly hair mullet. I don't know if it's like his promos always were to me the same, the yelling, and at the end, I'm gonna whisper in intensity, I'm the end of the world, or something like that. I don't know what it was, but anytime somebody brings up Sid, I'm just like, he was there. He wasn't ever my dude. So I'm curious to see what you're going to say about Sid.
He was kind of that, he was that Max version of that cool mean. He was mean and a bad guy, but he was very cool about it when he would do it. Down to the way he would pick his feuds, like the Millennium Man. When he was imitating Goldberg and doing the ridiculous thing with the streak and not really faking the streak, but it was obvious that he was building up and knocking out these jobbers to it was like his version of Shawn Michaels overselling for Hogan.
Yeah.
He was going out there and just doing ridiculous squash matches to prove a point that Goldberg wasn't what he said he was. But here's Sid Vicious to kind of do the exact same thing. So I think the way Sid was a bad guy was super cool. But also he tagged with Vader. He was one of the, the skyscrapers with Mean Mark Calloway. There were so many cool things where he's one of those guys where he had quality heel runs, but he also had a lot. He had that longevity of being a heel almost everywhere he was. So that's why I put Vicious at number 9 for me.
It's a very, very good one. It's a very, very good one.
It's a solid pick. I'm happy with it. Number 8, where you at?
So again, I mentioned that number 9 had a big. You'll notice that. The funny thing is, we were talking about a third chair. I think somebody just messaged me back and was like, "I can come on now."
Really? Who is it?
Yeah.
Just you want to see the link and they can hop on if they want to do their top 5 with us as we wrap around. They absolutely can.
Yeah.
It's a bonus episode. Let's have fun with it.
Yeah. Why not? Why the hell not? Talk some more about Sid.
What I liked about it was he was that guy even in WWE, and I know it's, WCW. This is where we do. It's our primer. We're going to, the history of WCW, but Sid was one of those talking about the method acting things. Sid's a lot like, you'll appreciate this, I think, Nicolas Cage. Okay. Nicolas Cage, in every movie Nicolas Cage has ever been in, he's always a guy with an issue. So Matchstick Man, he's a con man with an issue, like National Treasure, he's a conspiracy theorist with some issues. Like Face Off, he's a bad guy with issues. Con Air, he's a Marine with issues. Like Nick Cage always has something. Sid Vicious is that guy in pro wrestling. Sid Vicious is the heel with issues. Like sometimes it's a girl, sometimes it's a faction, sometimes it's a person or a promotion. Like Sid Vicious is a heel with issues. And I feel like that's kind of what made him great at it, because he could always be Sid Vicious no matter where he was at all the time.
Yeah. You're not wrong. My thing was, I think with Sid is he was in WCW and he had some good stuff, but I always assume WWF, like during the New Generation with Shawn, with Diesel, like all of those, like that's probably why I don't think of him much with WCW. But I mean, he had a lot of really good, storylines, and he worked with it always says in wrestling it takes two to tango. It always depends on your dance partner. Look at who he worked with. Like Hall of Famers across the board.
And he low-key had multiple world championship runs. He wore the strap in WWF.
Sure.
He had 2, I think, maybe 3 runs in WCW. He's at least a 3 or 4-time world champion everywhere he worked. Like, he was just that really cool bad guy.
Yeah,
and
he was.
I think that was one that was just kind of great about him. And that's what kind of put him on my list, was that ability to be that really cool bad guy everywhere he worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good. But yeah, I sent him the link. We'll see if he can jump on. He said he was like, he told me earlier, he's like, I'm working, and I forgot that he worked later. So if he does, it'll be a cool little surprise to see about coming. I won't tell you who it is yet.
Nice.
All right, but yeah, so we're talking about number 8, and I said how Jake helped add to Sting being that superhero. Mm-hmm. So did my number 8. Because it was very different, and I know you're gonna love this one because we've talked about him a lot. Cactus Jack.
I love Cactus Jack so much.
Cactus Jack as a heel, like, made Sting tough. He added a toughness to Surfer Sting. So that you mentioned on I believe when we were talking about the Vader episode, about how, like, with Cactus and Sting, you didn't see Sting doing suplexes on concrete or diving off of the apron or anything like that until his feud with Jack. And so here we are. And I mean, yes, he's so beloved for his baby face and like Foley and Mankind and everything. But like, heel Cactus Jack is great. And I would be remiss if I didn't say he was a heel in ECW when he was doing the anti-hardcore promos and I'm sorry, I love the Hard Times promo from Dusty Rhodes, always will. Up there for me though is the Kane Dewey promo from Mick Foley in ECW. Maybe it's because I'm a dad, I don't know, but a heel Mick Foley, a heel Cactus Jack, early in his career, knew what he was doing and knew that character.
I think when you watch Cactus Jack work at that point in his career, the key thing to think about is the bump card. He hadn't used his bumps yet. Yeah. So at this point in the 90s, when Cactus Jack was taking his hits and he was taking his bumps, like, he hit hard. He didn't pull any punches. He didn't cut any corners. He took those stairs head on every time, every single time.
They still hurt when I watch them.
The DDTs on the outside, the elbows off the apron, the suplexes, all of that was very real to him. So when you think about Cactus Jack, another one, solid pick, didn't make my list. But that was for me, like, when I think of Cactus Jack, I don't necessarily think of him as a heel or a face. Cactus Jack is just one of those entities that exist.
Okay, yeah.
I think of him in moments where you're like, against Sting, Cactus Jack was definitely the bad guy.
The heel.
But against Abdullah the Butcher, you're not really fucking sure if Cactus Jack is the bad
That's
guy
true.
or not.
That's
So
very,
I feel
very
like
true.
he was one of those guys that I see why he made your list, but he didn't make mine.
You'll notice a trend. As much as I love from the conception of the NWO, maybe not to the end, but that 96 to maybe 2000 run. Like, I love that time period so much. But this list, you're gonna start seeing some of Dad Hat's like earlier WCW picks. I mean, Jake the Snake, Cactus Jack. Like, I think the next one's gonna surprise you for me pulling them out.
Great Muta Sid Vicious for me. Number 8. You ready for this one?
Mm-hmm.
Raven.
Why did I not put Raven on my list? I love Raven.
1997, his summer debut.
Yeah.
Once again, he was one of those guys, a lot like Cactus Jack, where he's just that dark, brooding character who you don't really know is a good guy or a bad guy. But when he came into WCW, he was known as that ECW guy. He was that darker than usual, more hardcore.
Yeah.
He pushed all the limits, but it was right at the peak of that grunge rock movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in
I
your
do.
heart how important like that was to 12, 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids in our time. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So Raven was like, that all of that teen angst we felt and anger we felt, he was like it on TV. So he was a lot like Cactus Jack, where in the moment you'd be like, Raven may not be the bad guy here. But to me, like, that was what made him a great heel, because he was that like chaotic good heel, where sometimes he's like Deadpool. You know, that's how Raven was. Raven was like the Deadpool of pro wrestling. Not to mention the fact the man is a freaking genius in the business. The way his brain works, everything he did after WCW, WWE. He's still a coach and a producer in TNA Impact. Like, Raven is a genius, but as a heel, he played mind games. He was more. It wasn't about whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. It was like the mind games and the control he had over the people he would work with. That's what made Raven a great heel.
Absolutely. I love Raven. I mean, I love ECW. If you go back and watch any of the old Wrecking Crew podcasts, anytime ECW gets brought up, we would all, Husky, Jax, myself, we never did a Raven episode. It was coming. And then just life kind of happened. But Raven, like, I'm pretty sure we were scheduled to have a Raven episode, and then that's when my son was born. Like, so we never got to it. But Raven and WCW, like, I mean, you're right. His mind, everything with the flock was perfect. Like, it was clear as day. Like, he had this cult of guys. That cult followed him. That cult took how many bumps and things from him. My favorite Raven feud is Raven DDP for the US strap. Like that 98 Slamboree 98, the cage match with the weapons, like the riot gear, the riot squad with him. Raven is, I don't think Raven came into my life in ECW. Well, I discovered him first in WCW and then went back and found everything because somebody told me, he was in ECW, right? And I said, no, because I discovered ECW after WCW because I grew up on WCW. But
Philadelphia hadn't made it way south yet.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like in the Charlotte area, we had the big Concord Mills Mall, and they had a kiosk where you could tape trading, kids. It was a thing, and tape buying. And like on one side of the kiosk was a TV playing Japanese stuff. That's where I saw like Mick Foley exploding barbed wire death matches with Terry Funk. Other side was showing ECW stuff, and so like I had tapes from ECW. Like that's how after WCW, I saw him in WCW. That's how I went back and saw him then. But Raven came into my life, and I was like, this is me. Like there's never been somebody on wrestling on TV where I've been like, somebody represents me, and that was Raven. That misunderstood, little alternative, little punk rock kid. Parents don't get what he's into, and Yeah, I loved him in WCW. Great pick, man. Great pick.
One of my things about Raven was when I had Mickey James on the show, shameless plug for myself. I had a chance to sit down with Mickey, but I talked to her about the Clockwork Horrors House of Fun match that she had with Raven in it. And it was her, and I can't remember her partner against Jeff Jarrett and Raven, I believe was how it worked out. But she said how safe he was in the ring. He didn't work differently with her because she was a woman. He was just able to do all of his stuff safely. So it didn't matter that she was a woman.
Yeah.
So he was able to do everything he did with the boys with a woman because that's how safe he was.
Yeah.
And because of how light she was, he could throw her everywhere around the ring. And she said it was so much fun because she felt protected the whole time. So I think that says everything you need to hear in a pro wrestling situation, is that a woman Mickey James's size felt safe and protected with a crazy madman like Raven while he threw her around the ring.
Yeah. I'll give you a hot take. Raven, best DDT in wrestling history.
Oh, his double underhook was solid, man.
He was always like, I put Arn and Jake up there with him, of course, but he was so fast with it.
He did the double underhook DDT the way Randy Orton does the RKO. He could literally be in stride and just catch you with it out of nowhere, and that's what was smooth. That's what was powerful about it. Yeah.
His DDT. Solid pick, man. Super solid pick.
Any word on the guest? We're gonna keep rolling.
We're gonna keep rolling. Nothing. I wonder if they were finishing up work. It doesn't even show that they're active now.
We'll wait and see if they pop on. Whenever they do, they can just start with whatever number we're on.
Yeah.
Number 7.
Going even further back. I told you we're going with reminder they're gonna be older. Harley Race, King Harley.
I feel like our lists got swapped somehow. Like in a normal, non-weird way. Like some of the people I've picked should be on your list, and the people you've picked, like Harley Race should obviously be on my list, but he's not. And now I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even think about Harley.
Harley. I mean, and I have to go back to Starrcade and the cage with Flair and everything. That for Flair, who has made a career of being a heel a lot, like being kind of the baby face, this was his crowning moment against King Harley, like in the cage and everything. Harley, we touched a lot on it in the Vader episode. Like, look at what he did with Vader. When Vader didn't need a mouthpiece, he still had Harley that added legitimacy, that added that mouthpiece to somebody who didn't need it. But Harley, like anybody that says that old school wrestling is boring, you need to watch some Harley Race matches, man.
He was able to tell a story using a headlock, using a collar and elbow. Al Snow said that the reason why he thinks the collar and elbow tie-up is the once upon a time to every story is because of people like Harley Race and Ric Flair.
Yeah. Harley's great. Harley is like, I don't know. I have these vague memories of, like, there are certain wrestlers where I remember exactly first time I saw him, first match. I may not remember the opponent, but I can tell you, like, I remember, like, I saw this person at Beach Blast, or I saw this person at a Clash of the Champion. Harley, I have super vague memories of being up in Virginia, sitting on my grandfather's lap in the dog house is what he calls it. They could transform the garage into almost like a little, like a man cave, what would be called now. And it had chairs and couches, and like it was like a little lounge, and we would watch TV, and that's how I got introduced to wrestling, was through my grandfather and my dad. And but I have these vague memories of sitting on his lap and Harley Race.
I love Harley Race. You can't say enough things about it. He's one of those guys, could be on my list, like I said, because he was a babyface a lot. He was, King Harley. He played those roles. But when he was a bad guy, it meant something.
It did.
All the way back into the NWA days, the few times he made heel turns. And, it takes a really bad guy to make Ric Flair a babyface. And he was able to pull that off.
Yep.
And, that's a solid pick. You can't go wrong if you can be so bad that Ric Flair's the good guy.
Yeah, right. So Harley, I just felt like Harley had to be on there. I just felt like he just had to. And I felt an injustice putting him at 10.
That's so funny to me because you put Hogan at 10.
I know, right?
Like, and it's so, I would have thought, like, I can't wait because as we start getting Glower on my list, you're going to be like,
I think you're going to be shocked at my next one.
see, you might be shocked at my number 7.
Okay, go ahead.
The Genetic Freak, Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner.
Like he was one of those that I was debating. Like he was up there.
Holla if you hear me.
Yeah.
Like
I got freaks 8 days out of the week.
I've got freaks 8 days out of the week.
You fat son of a bitch.
It's a long way from Steiner math, but everything about that person was like, once again, kind of like Sid Vicious, that too cool to be a good guy, bad guy. Not to mention the fact he had some of those old skeezy heel tactics. He would go out into the ring and you bunch of rednecks smell like you haven't taken a shower in 5 weeks kind of heel work.
Old school heel stuff.
That's what he was good at. And you could tell he came from the territory. So, that's a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah.
Everything about the way he played a bad guy was about, it was almost so textbook that if he did it today, people would be like, that's just boring heel work because it's old school wrestling.
Yeah.
But watching Scott Steiner do it at that point, late 90s, early 2000s, right before the changeover happened, like that version of Scott Steiner was, as much as people like to shit on WCW at that point, he was that little bit of hope, that little bit of gleaming light where you were like, old wrestling still gets over. And I liked that about it. So that's why I put, Big Papa Pump, number 7.
Yeah.
Right. Almost in that sweet middle spot of my top 10.
Yeah. I mean, it was the heel turn that like people were shocked at because he was never going to turn on his brother. No, never. And join the NWO. And it was not only did he changed completely physically.
Bleached his hair out and had the dyed beard and stuff. Yeah.
The heel work where he dodged his brother pay-per-view after pay-per-view with Buff. And the heel stuff he did with Buff being the comedian, Scott being the enforcer.
Yeah, the big heater enforcer guy. I loved it.
But you mentioned like people shitting on that time frame. At the end of WCW, it was Booker T and Scott Steiner. That's who that company tied the reins to be the main event folks. Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, and Booker T. Look, I mean, Scott Steiner was the last person to lose the WCW championship in WCW.
Correct. On that last episode of Nitro. It was him and Booker T in the main event. Like, that says everything you need to. The biggest baby face in the company versus the biggest heel in the company.
Yep.
I guess that puts us to number 6.
Number 6. So this was a name that just kept floating around my head. And I was like, do I put him on here? And then as I was taking people off. Again, and when I wrote it, I typed it up. I was like, this is a Will pick, I feel like. I don't like Harley. My number 6 is Barry Windham.
Wow. You did go deep with this. Maybe, did I make your list in my sleep and just forget about it? Is that what happened?
Probably.
Because when you hear my 6, you're going to be like, Will, you didn't make that list.
I'm like, did you just watch late 90s, like mid late? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because like when I think heels, like I think back to my childhood and younger, and we're not like the wrestling's still real to me. Damn it! Like where I like heels, like they were the bad guys that young DadHat just didn't like. And I mean that's where we're going. I mean, we're looking at like the early 90s WCW. It's where a lot of mine stuff is. There's a few coming up that are not, but a good chunk of them still are. But Barry Windham, I mean, former world heavyweight champion. I mean, a lot of people people forget Windham and the Four Horsemen. Like, he was great with the Horsemen. He was great as an individual. He hell of a promo, and just like, and I don't know, I could watch Barry Windham matches for the rest of the time.
He's that guy, like you're talking about with Harley. and the side headlock and the takeover and the way they ran the ropes and the way they took their bumps. They could sell an atomic drop and make it look like it was the most devastating move in pro wrestling. Like all of them, the Barry Windhams, the Ric Flairs, the Harley Races, all of those guys were cut from a different cloth than what wrestling was in the late 90s, and it definitely what it was today. Because you didn't have to be that larger than life character. You just had to have that raw ability and talent. And Barry Windham was one of those guys. He was never a larger than life character. He was just talented worker.
Yeah. I hate comparing people and saying, like, looking at today's wrestlers, like, this is this generation's, you know what, or who's going to be the next Shawn Michaels, things like that. To me, though, it's changed a little bit here because of the character work we've gotten from him. But for the longest time, I always thought Seth Rollins is this generation's Barry Windham. Like, Barry could work with everybody. You could put Barry with Sting. You could put Barry with Vader. You could put Barry with Flair. And he was just gonna deliver. Like, whether he won, whether he lost, Barry Windham was a gem in the ring. Like, it's the best way I can put it. He was fun to watch. He was fun to hate. He was like, but he was surprising. Like, we've seen these shoot interviews even with Seth where he talks about, he's like, I always feel like I'm the reliable one, but I'm never the face of the company. It's been Roman. It's been that. And I feel like that was also Barry. Like, I'm always just behind Flair.
The workhorse.
Yeah. Like, and I love Barry Windham. I could do a whole, we might eventually get to a whole Barry Windham episode.
I feel like my next pick for my number 6 shouldn't even, like, putting them side by side against Barry Windham. I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and apologize, but I'm happy with my number 6 pick. I'm going to go ahead and say that I picked him on purpose.
Okay.
All right. That's Jeff Jarrett.
Okay.
Tennessee wrestling forever, slap nuts.
Yeah.
Like,
he's on my list a little bit further up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's here. He's here. He's like, I said that, you're getting a lot of my old school. I will give you this. Of everyone else on my list, he's the only one that was prominent from 96 or later. Everyone else is earlier.
Wow. Okay.
So, but he's up there. I'll save my stuff for Jarrett then. But go ahead.
Everybody after Jarrett for me is also pre-96.
Okay.
But Jeff Jarrett, he was another one of those classic Southern wrestling bad guys. He could go out there, he could roast the entire city and state wherever he was at. He made you hate him. He was a technical worker. He was sound. He spent, what was it, $250 million or whatever it was on guitars when we did the math and we laid it out there.
Yeah.
It was a ridiculous amount. I'll have to refine that text message thread. That was hilarious. But Jeff Jarrett was that, that love to hate him bad guy. And it's going to be a stretch, but follow me here. Okay. This isn't quite as good as Omega Canyon, but Jeff Jarrett has a lot of the same qualities in what he is doing in 99, 2000, and 01. He's using a lot of the same heel tactics that MJF is using in 2023. A lot of the same way he talks, his mannerisms in the ring, and I know that's funny because Jeff Jarrett's in the company with him today, but a lot of the mannerisms of what MJF does is a lot of these classic heel tactics that your people like your Barry Windhams and your Jeff Jarrett's and your Harley Races were doing, in that late 80s through the 90s push. So I put Jeff Jarrett here because he was that first love to hate him. Without him in the late 99, 2000, 2001, we wouldn't get MJF. We wouldn't have The Miz. We wouldn't have Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of these guys came because, they ran because Jeff Jarrett smacked people in the face with guitars for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And I see where you're going with the whole, like, MJF comparison. I'm gonna save my Jarrett stuff for when we get to him.
For sure. I've got a couple that are on my list. I know the top 5 now. There's going to be a lot where these are probably going to go quicker than the back 5 because there's going to be a lot of overlapping, I think.
I don't know.
Really?
I could a few. Maybe. But I mean, he is from Tennessee. I just assumed Jarrett was going to be somewhere on your list.
For sure.
Yeah.
My top 5 are a lot of because why they were heels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's going to be really important for my top 5 to remember. The reason they became heels was a big deal, and that's my top 5.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So my number 5, I don't have to say much about it. We've already covered it. Vader.
Time.
Yeah. Like, I mean, loved him because he was he was a monster. Like, he wasn't a heel psychologically like Jake Roberts. He wasn't a heel in terms of like Cactus Jack, who was doing things that just scared me physically. He was terrifying how big he was. Like, I literally thought he would rip someone's head off. How like menacing because of his size and everything. Vader. Go watch our Vader episode. It's great.
Go watch our Vader episode. The mask says it all. On his intro, his debut, when he came out with the big black Cthulhu mask, like everything about Vader screamed, big badass bad guy, and I loved it. So yeah, listen to our Vader episode. Me and DadHat just went off for an hour. Who was on that episode with us?
XLJ.
XLJ, that's right. Me, DadHat, and XLJ. Just go listen to Vader. Number 5. This is a big one for me.
Okay.
Because I'm not a guy. And number 5 for me is Sting. I'm not a Sting guy. You know that. You and I have had that conversation. It's just not my cup of tea. I don't yuck any yums. But what's important to remember about Sting's heel turn was the whole, what if he was the third guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what if Sting turned in 96 and it wasn't Hogan yet? Think about, like, he was the only person in the world that was such a big over baby face where that heel turn would have mattered as much as it did. Yeah. Sting would be higher on my list than 5 if he didn't turn later. When he turned then and joined the NWO, it still had the same effect, but not quite as much as what happened at the Bash at the Beach in 96. It didn't quite mean that much, but that doesn't take away from how important it was when Surfer Sting was gone forever and Crow Sting came out for the first time, and he was that brooding version of himself. And I think Sting becoming a bad guy was that, did WCW just lose their last soldier moment? Because he was that poster child for so long in WCW.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to respond to this because I love my Sting.
Yes,
and always have. See, I don't see Sting as a heel, really. Like, Crow Sting to me is not a heel. He's the anti-hero. He's like the Venom in the comic books.
Kind of like your Deadpool kind of guy, like what I was talking about before. Yeah, like Cactus Jack.
Yeah, he's an anti-hero. And then we get to Wolfpack Sting, and I mean, everybody was glad that he was talking, and he was like Surfer Sting, very animated again. To me, we don't get heel Sting until, and it's covered one part of the episode by our buddy Husky Rhodes here on World Championship Wreckage. We get the match at Halloween Havoc 98, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Bret Hart versus Sting, and Sting goes away for a while. And yes, personally, he's battling demons. And he's going through a divorce and stuff like that. But we get, when he returns in 99, we get a heel version. So much to the fact that we see a lot of it. He's stripped of a title, which leads to the crowning of Bret Hart as the actual world champion later on, as a babyface in WCW. But I literally just had this conversation with Husky, I don't know, less than 2 weeks ago. And I said, to me, heel Sting in 99, he's trying way too hard. Like, you talk about every successful character, dialed up to 11. I don't think Sting knew how to be a heel.
It's because he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
But I think the importance of him being that bad guy is what made him make my list. Is because Sting was the quintessential American sweetheart. So when he became a bad guy, it meant something. You know what I mean? Because like I said, he was that last trophy, that last soldier for WCW. And then so when he became a bad guy, you were like, fuck, man. Like there's nobody left.
No, it didn't mean, I mean, I agree with you on that.
So that's our top 5. You got to give me your number 4.
All right. So number 4, Jeff Jarrett. Number 4.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff to me is he gets nuclear heat, like Dominic right now.
Agreed.
He doesn't have to open his mouth, and it just rains on him. That's what Jeff Jarrett was then.
Yes.
Like fans in WCW, even though he was from the South, like most of what WCW is built upon, they saw him as a WWF guy and a very entitled WWF guy. And so when he came down and was like, I'm the chosen one, and the whole Russo thing at Bischoff, and he got the belt. I mean, I love Jeff Jarrett, and I will pick on people. Like, I remember when he debuted in AEW, I was like, King of the Mountain, AEW future champion, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Jarrett. Yes, I was joking, but also I wouldn't care if he did it because it pisses so many people off. That's why I like Jeff Jarrett so much. Like choke on that, slap nuts, and all that. Like I don't know. And I like Jeff in the ring. I mean, I like him more.
He's
as
a technical powerhouse.
He
can work.
Yeah, he could work. Yeah. I mean, as we were that later WCW, like, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff, but there's also a lot of gems and everything. And I stand by. I like Black and Silver NWO. It was short-lived, but I liked it. I liked his feud with DDP. We talked about on the David Arquette. Like, it was like he was the centerpiece for that. I liked him being like, it made sense with Vince Russo being on television, and he was a powerhouse in WWF creatively. Why wouldn't he want somebody he worked with in WWF being that champion? Everything with Jeff Jarrett to me in WCW made sense. And people still to this day just hate on him so much, and that's probably why I love him so much.
Agreed. He was number 6 on my list, so everything you just said just adds to what I did. Number 4 for me has also already been on your list.
Okay.
Number 4 for me is one Eric Bischoff.
Okay. Yeah, I tied him in with Hogan, yeah.
Eric Bischoff for me was that heel. He was the WCW version of Mr. McMahon. Yeah. When he came out with WCW, with the NWO, and he became that moment of power, but also with the bad guys, it was that kind of nuclear astronomical heat. Yeah. Because like nobody liked Eric Bischoff, no matter the market they were in.
He'd come out smiling at the camera and talking and like arm around Liz and
going into commentary booths and wreaking havoc, bringing the outsiders with him everywhere he went. So he had protection down to the fact of the phony brand split in 97, 98, where they started running NWO branded events. Like, this man took the textbook on what it meant to be a heel promoter and turned that up to 11 for his own personality trait. So that's why Eric Bischoff's number 4 on my list.
So the reason and we're about to get into another one that has a caveat, but the reason that I put Bischoff, I put Hogan as 10, and I just kind of tagged Bischoff along with it I was like, I never got clarification from you. And then today just got busy. I was like, are we just talking heel workers? Are we talking heel everybody, like managers? Because we've already covered that. Like heel, like, where are we just going overall? So like, I was like, I'm going to stick to workers, but I'll put that caveat for Bischoff with Hogan. Cause I mean, they were one and the same together most of the time.
I had 2 people on my list that weren't workers per se, but Bischoff worked a match and the person who's next on my list also worked a match, but isn't a worker.
Yeah.
So number 3, we're top 3 now.
Top 3. So this one has a caveat, and you'll know as soon as I say the name, you're going to know who my caveat is. Rick Rude with Paulie Dangerously. Like, Rick Rude. Nothing screams nuclear heat than having your opponent's wife or girlfriend airbrushed on their crotch. Sorry. Yep. And Rick Rude was that. I mean, look, back in the day, folks, like you might look at Rick Rude now and be like, dude with a mustache, slicked back hair. Back in the day, that was a dreamboat. Like my mom was like
Tom Selleck looking motherfuckers, dude.
Like loves Rick Rude. And like the ladies loved him and everything. And but he could work, and man, he was great on the mic. And I loved him as almost like as a manager with Hennig and everything. And he was always heel because of Kurt Hennig. Kurt Hennig was another one that was close to being on my list. Like I love because he was as perfect, and Kurt, like no matter which variation you look at, I always liked him more as a heel. But with Rick Rude, and especially with Paulie Dangerously and everything, like I don't know, it's just a match made in heaven with that. Like we're gonna have to eventually just do a whole deep dive on Dangerous Alliance, like from start to finish. Like that's gonna have to win a poll, damn it.
Okay, that's funny because my number 3 is Paulie Dangerously.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in the same mindset. Yeah.
For that reason alone, you brought up Rude. I also think like it was a heel turn sort of with Stunning Steve, the way he did it. Like everything about the Deadly Alliance was that creepy used car salesman, like bad guy, down to busting Cornette open with the phone that night. Like everything about what Paulie was that sleazeball bad guy. And I think even now in 2023, that's still just who he is. He's still just Paulie turned up to 11. In our managers episode, I think I put him at number 2. He's number 3 in my heels in WCW. Like Paulie, another great mind for the business. He's been successful everywhere he went, even though he bankrupted a company and a half. So I think Paulie was a easy fit for that number 3 spot. Listening to you while you put Rude on there, if we had a third person on here and they put Austin in it, it would make perfect sense why we need a Deadly Alliance episode. You know what I mean? Like, because any of those guys could have made this list.
Yeah, and I looked at Rude too. I mean, we're trying to stick strictly to WCW, but like in WWF, I'm sorry, Rick Rude, great heel. I mean, I don't know. Rick Rude to me doesn't get enough love. Like
everything around the SummerSlam build between it was him and I can't remember who he worked at SummerSlam, but it was building up with the Jake the Snake feud, and that's when he wore Jake the Snake's wife's face on his crotch. Yeah. Like that was all of it building up. Rick Rude was a great bad guy.
He was, and it was. I mean, he was great at being look how physically. Like, just look at him physically. And it was one of those things like, you know how hard he has to work to maintain that look? And that's not the audience. I'm sorry. As a fat ninja, like I ain't never going to look even half like Rick Rude. I'm sorry. I ain't going to have one of those like 12 abs he had and everything. Like, it's he was a heel. He didn't have to even say a word. He just took off, like he just came out to the ring, and you're gonna hate him because like he's so physically imposing. So
agreed. All right, it's top 2 time.
Oh yeah, you hit Paulie. Okay, so 1 and 2 were hard for me. Like, and I think you're gonna know who my number 1 is after I say number 2. But like I had him, like I had it. It was like 1 question mark. 1 question mark /2 question mark beside both of them. My number 2 is Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster.
Okay.
Like, maybe not the crazy Dungeon of Doom and everything, but like that dark, sinister, that Taskmaster, that Kevin Sullivan, with Woman. You know, even feuding with Benoit and everything. Like Kevin Sullivan is I'm sorry. You say Kevin Sullivan, I'm like heel. Sorry, there's nothing up heel automatically. Like from the first, I mean, and he was. People talk about the Undertaker and like the dark demonic and everything. Sorry, Kevin Sullivan did a dark demonic way before the Undertaker did.
As you were saying it, I was writing down my note from earlier in the episode where we talked about method acting, people who eat, sleep, and breathe their character work. And that's who the Taskmaster was. He was that guy, kayfabe all the time. So great pick for number 2. Yeah. I don't disagree at all. That was a fantastic pick. Honorable mention on my list, didn't make my top 10. This is where you're going to be able to tip your hat, DadHat, because my top 2 changed. My number 2 heels in WCW is Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
You
have him as number 2. I have him as number 10.
Yeah, I say his heel turn in wrestling was one of the biggest heel turns ever. It was one of the most influential of what happened post 1996 when the All-American good guy became the bad guy, spray painted the belt. All the history that the 10 pounds of gold and the big gold belt represented was down the drain with 3 simple letters. I think everything about who he became with that heel turn is why he was strong enough to make in the top 10 any number, but specifically why I put him so high on my list is because of what the heel turn for Hollywood Hogan meant at that point in wrestling. So it's one of the most influential heel turns, but he was such a powerful good guy to immediately take that 180 degrees and have all that power, but as a bad guy is like Thanos getting all the Infinity Stones at once.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with it. I felt like if I said Hulk Hogan was up there, everybody's gonna be like, "It's DadHat. He loves the NWO. Of course, that's where he's gonna go with it and everything." But like, I took the time and I went down and I just really analyzed. Like, I mean, shit. Did you think I was gonna say Barry Windham and Harley Race in this episode? No.
All right, number 1, and I think I'm curious to see who it is.
So just like you. With the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Were you expecting anything else from me? From Charlotte, North Carolina, the Nature Boy, the 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, Ric Flair.
I had Flair's number 4 on my list, and I took him off and put Sting in that place because I felt like Sting. Everybody knew Flair was a heel. He was a bad guy. He was always that bad guy 90% of his career. I don't think you can ever take that away from him. But that's why I didn't put him on my list, was because some of the heel turns and some of these guys as heel, I felt like meant more for wrestling with their heel turns. Ric Flair did more for wrestling than arguably anybody could do, though.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's, So I definitely get why he's your number 1.
Yeah. Flair was always the heel on my TV.
Yeah.
Always growing up.
Agreed.
Like, in the main event picture, the heel always there. Like he pissed me off and was even more of a heel for leaving the company and taking the belt with them to New York, to WWF, and having it on their television. And then winning their world title and saying that was the greatest moment in his professional career. It made me hate him even more and everything. So sorry, it's Ric Flair. It's Ric Flair for me. Now, like, I don't know who your number 1 is because I'm like, who the did you say?
My number 1 heels in WCW, and I put 2 because there's a caveat. Because pull my old Justin, got my DadHat moment.
Yeah.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
Can't deny.
After the last episode, after talking to you, like I've always said, Hogan's heel turn was the biggest heel turn in wrestling. But without the outsiders showing up and being the bad guys, Hogan's heel turn would have never happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're starting the invasions. They're the catalyst. They're arguably the 2 most important heels in the business because of what happened a few months later with Hogan at Bash. So because of that, I put Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and that's 100% on you, Bubba. You led to that happening. I think they may be two of the most important heels in wrestling now because of the conversation we had with it.
Yeah. I mean, it go watch the Hall Nash Invasion episode that we watched or that we talked about. It's weird because like I kept thinking about it, and I'm gonna bring it up again because they're your number one. Hall and Nash, their arrival and then to Bash at the Beach. It's 6 weeks. It's nothing. Like, do you know how long they could have stretched that out and teased? We talked about it on the episode. They could have literally said, like, they could have been like, it's gonna be a showstopper, teasing Sean. We're gonna beat you down 1, 2, 3. Talking about Waltman. Bringing up Taker, bringing up anybody. Like they could have done every person on the roster big name. Yep. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I looking, just comparing number ones. I think for me, it's looking at maybe not just it's overall and the length of time Flair was a heel, and as a young DadHat discovering and starting to love wrestling, it was always Ric Flair as that heel. So that's probably why I have him number one. But I mean, I can't deny what you're saying about Hall and Nash. Like, yeah. And I mean, yeah, they don't come over. We don't get heel Hogan.
Bingo.
The NWO is not a thing.
Look at that, man. We did it. Our favorite WCW heels.
Woo. Will, what's going on at Botch Spots and Share Shots for the next little bit?
We've got some cool stuff coming down the pipes. We just released a live interview earlier tonight with Alex Taylor, the NWA superstar. That'll be going up. I've got a rescheduled interview with former King of the Deathmatch, Eric Dillinger, coming down the pipes. I've got Big Strong Mims from Magnum Muscles next week. Always got some just banger interviews coming down. Waiting on episode 100 to drop. I've got a really big guest coming down. It'll be really fun to drop it. So I'm kind of on hold until I have a chance to drop hers. But when I get this big one done, it'll be huge. But other than that, every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, Botch Bots and Chair Shots. Check us out.
Do it. Yeah, Botch Bots is fun from their trivia to just talking about what's going on to interviews. And I swear Will knows every freaking wrestling content creator in the world, because every time I look on the screen, I'm just like, well, who's this person? I don't know them. Let me go follow them. Or he does his shout out videos, and I'm like, who the F is this? So our topics that we posted with the Hall Nash episode were the Disco Inferno. That was mine. And we'll put 83 weeks. The victories that Eric Bischoff had and what he did to maintain that, beating the WWF. Because by the time this poll ends, we can go ahead and have the next one up. You go first this time because I've got to think of a topic.
I think that for my topic, I want to do a retro review watch along to the historic Halloween Havoc 97. The whole pay-per-view. We'll watch it leading up to the episode, and we'll look through it like we would if it happened in 2023.
Okay, so we'll watch it and then we'll watch and break it down live on the show. Yeah, I figured we would eventually get to that where we pick particular pay-per-views and everything. Yeah, because there's certain ones that I'm like.
I think Halloween '97 was a big one. Plus, it's got the Eddie Ray match.
Of course,
but I think Halloween Havoc '97 is a big enough pay-per-view that we could easily kill an hour just discussing the matches on the card. So my pick, Halloween Havoc '97.
Man, that's a good one.
It's also probably an easy dub for me unless you pull something really badass out.
Like I did Disco.
Yeah.
I didn't think you saw that coming at all. Like they're like, he's not gonna throw Disco Inferno. No. Well, now I have to research Disco if he wins. But okay, I got one.
What's up?
I mentioned him briefly tonight. I want to talk about Kurt Hennig in WCW.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And why in WCW he never reached that pinnacle. Like he didn't get it in WWF, didn't get it in WCW, and why. And eventually we do get him back in WWF at the Rumble and a little bit later on before the plane ride from hell, of course. But just what held him down in WCW. and because he had some bangers, some matches from DDP, Starrcade 97, U.S. title, passing that title, giving the rub to DDP, who, again, I can't believe this is episode 10, and we haven't covered DDP. Yeah. Like, that's crazy to me.
We're waiting to pull that out. One of us will just do it when we need a win on a poll because we know DDP's
I had it on the poll when you beat me.
Really?
I don't remember which one it was. It was early on. But like we get comedic stuff like with Barry Windham and the West Texas Rednecks and things like that. But I want to talk about Curt Hennig. I'm gonna throw that out there. So Halloween Havoc 97 watch along, Curt Hennig. Okay. That's a good one.
I'm good with either of those.
I'm good with either of those. So folks, you can find us, of course. You can find the Will Gray over on Twitch at Bots and Share Shots. Give them a watch. Love them so much. Allison, everything they do and everything. They're like family. And they, for some reason, put up with me and welcome me into their lives and put up with me for some reason.
I love the shit out of you, Bubba.
I know. I love you too. But if you want to follow us, which I would greatly appreciate it if you did, you can find us over on Twitter at WC Wreckage Pod. That's where we're going to always have those polls for you guys to vote on. If you want to follow us on Instagram, of course, you can just search World Championship Wreckage, but it's World Championship Wreckage with an underscore between World and Championship and between Championship and Wreckage. And then TikTok is the one that I always forget. It's WC Wreckage Podcast. TikTok doesn't get a lot of love. I also need to post a little bit more to it. But, of course, you can find all the fun stuff that we're doing here on the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel, from back in the day with XLJ the OG to Pro Wrestling Newbie React with Mr. B-Roll, both of them from Cole TV. Give them a follow and a listen to. Love those boys, just like Will, their family. We've also got Icon with Husky Rhodes and the Bionic Silverback from Texas All-Star Wrestling, Nate Slater. We have got Creative Character Writing with Jay Knows Wrestling, our wonderful producer here. And there's more stuff coming up. I literally talked to somebody 5 minutes before jumping on with Will about something, and I'm going to fill him in once we finish up here, guys. But yeah, this has been a fun bonus episode because we tied for the first time. Will, before we jump off, anything you need to say? Any message, words of wisdom you need to spread?
No, I think the best way to end this episode is the same way we end every episode.
From our friend, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.